Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Let's get rolling. Against my better judgment, I'm going to do this episode, and I would imagine that you could guess what this episode is on. The attempted assassination of former President Donald J. Trump. Happens in Pennsylvania when Trump was doing a rally. The shooter, who was killed by Secret Service, was actually outside of the protected area, which I assume is why he was able to do what he did. He was standing on a roof, and in shooting the president, really grazing him, he killed one other person and seriously injured another. This is a very difficult time, a very difficult time. Perhaps the most difficult day of the year. We will look back on this day and remember it. I remember the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan like it was yesterday. I remember the assassination of Jack Kennedy like it was yesterday. I remember walking home after the principal had dismissed all classes and seeing my mother crying at the table after Jack Kennedy had been shot. All of these are very important days. It does not matter how you may or may not feel about Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump has a fan base. He has a movement. Is it as big as it was when he was running for president the first time? No. Could it get big now based upon what just happened? My guess is that it could. I don't know if it will, but as a sociologist, I know that when figures are perceived as being martyrs, and Trump was not exactly a martyr, but close, their fan base often grows astronomically. So that could happen. Even worse, who shot President Trump? Whether anybody knows right now, I have no idea. If people know, they are not talking about it. The information has not been released to the public. So we, as people in the United States, or even in the world, have no way of knowing who it was that attempted to assassinate President Donald J. Trump. My concern is that the person who did it is one of Trump's enemies or perceived enemies. Say somebody like with this sign on their cap or this sign on their t-shirt, Antifa, or Trump mispronounces as Antifa, Antifa, anti-fascism. What if somebody who did it was wearing an Antifa cap or t-shirt? What if the person who did it had attended Antifa rallies, or for that matter, Black Lives Matter rallies? What even if the person who attempted to assassinate him was a Democrat? The best possible scenario that we could hope to see coming out of this, and by best, I mean the one with the least possible risk, in my opinion, would be if the assailant, the attempted assailant, was a neo-Nazi. And on top of that, if that neo-Nazi disagreed with Trump on his policy toward Israel, that would be a good outcome, because at least then there would be no legs for people to stand on. There would be less of a likelihood of riots, of mass murders, of an insurrection. Now, I am not trying to frighten anyone, far from it. My desire is to calm people down, because we are still in the moment of shock. When something has just happened, when an event like this, the attempted assassination of a president, happens, most people are so disoriented by it that they do not know how to react. They are simply spellbound by it. They are hypnotized by it. I think that is the state of the United States right now as I am making this episode of my podcast. Tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day will be, in my opinion, most likely very different, because then people will have had a chance to process what just occurred. Now, I have I have nothing but sympathy for Donald Trump, his family, his friends, the people who were killed, even the gunman, the person who was seriously injured. They have nothing but my sympathy, and I wish their families all the best. Usually, when a gunman does something like this, their families had no idea that they were even inclined in that direction, and they are as surprised as anyone else. Will that be true this time? We will see. But that might very well happen. And so I express my condolences for them as well. The people who were in attendance at the rally, who witnessed this horrific event, while watching the replay about 5 or 10 minutes after it happened, I wasn't watching the rally live. I don't watch Trump rallies live. But watching the replay, I heard the sound of a woman screaming, shrieking. It was an almost stereotypical sound, like something from a horror movie. But it was not stereotypical. It was real. She was an eyewitness to a killing, to 2 killings, 1 serious injury and 1 minor injury on behalf of Donald Trump. Now, after Trump ducked, got below the podium or behind the podium, he motioned to other people, I think, to get down as well. That's my impression, although it's hard to make it out that clearly. After he was protected by Secret Service, he put his fist up into the air in defiance. At that point, the thought occurred to me, the election is over. And then I heard a story about President Joe Biden, who says he is suspending all campaign activity for the immediate future. Now, that is Joe Biden's own business. But what does that mean? What is the implication of that decision? President Trump will be getting around-the-clock news coverage. Joe Biden will be getting none, or next to none. And he will be providing none of his own commercials to make up for the absence. And so this is, despite the horridity of what happened, despite however disgusting it is what happened, despite what this shows about the need for some level of gun control by the people who are not revolutionaries. It is revolutionaries who should have guns, not people who are counter-revolutionary. But despite all that, despite my own opinions about all of these things, the worst thing that could happen, again, would be for the person who attempted to kill Donald Trump to be one of his enemies. I say that again for a reason. It is vitally important. It is something we need to keep in our minds constantly for the next few days. I know wearing this cap, wearing this t-shirt, if it comes out that somebody in Antifa or even somebody just on the left, whatever the right calls the left, which is often simply progressives, that somebody like that was the assailant and attempted assailant, will I be safe? My answer to that is I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I will be, but I will certainly be less safe than I was earlier today. I may very well be a walking target, and somebody may come after me. Now, the advantage for me is where I live. I live in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, which is a blue area of Texas. And it is not a very politicized area either. I have never seen a MAGA bumper sticker or a MAGA t-shirt or a MAGA cap since I have been down here. And I have been down here for more than 2 years. So maybe I have that in my ballpark. Maybe, but I have no way of knowing. And so, although I have tremendous compassion on Donald Trump, his family, on the people who were killed, the other person who was injured, I am also afraid for people like myself and even people who are not like myself, but are progressives who to people on the far right in many cases are seen incorrectly as being like myself. That is my concern. Is it a fear? No. It doesn't frighten me. What frightens me is Project 2025 and the fact that many people may lose their Social Security and Medicare benefits, at least to an extent. Will that definitely happen? Nobody knows. What frightens me is the fact that Project 2025 invokes the cultural Marxism meme, which is an anti-Semitic neo-Nazi idea. That frightens me. And with a Donald Trump in the White House for a second time, the risk of that totally getting out of control will be huge. The chances of another insurrection, like the 1/6 insurrection on the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., might be significantly increased. There may be other insurrections on a state level. Nobody knows what will happen. It is simply much too soon. And so I don't think that we should be in a state of panic. For one thing, panic, of course, does no good. It's counterproductive because when you are panicking, you are not thinking straight. And it is always important when confronted by a danger, and we are confronted by a danger right now, to have your head planted firmly on your shoulders. So if the time arises, you can make an appropriate decision to protect yourself and your loved ones, because no one else, in my opinion, will do that except for you. They will be concerned about themselves and their own loved ones, and rightly they should be. Again, my concern is there. My concern for myself is there a bit. My concern for people like me is there even more. My concern for this country, a country I despise. Nonetheless, I am concerned about it because I was born here. This is my homeland. I am concerned that people in this country into which I was born, the country to which I have citizenship, continues past tomorrow or the day after. And I can't say that I am overly confident that that, in fact, will be the case. Do I hope so? Yes and no. Again, for those of you who have watched my podcast, you know that I am not a supporter of the capitalist world system. And the US, in my view, is the head of the beast of that system. And so for the US to be brought down, not by violence committed by this gunman idiot, but simply by its own dialectical contradictions, is not something that I would oppose. In fact, it is something that I look forward to, although I don't know if I will live to see the day personally. It may happen long after I am gone, and I have no way of knowing one way or the other. But again, please note this day. Remember where you were. Remember where your family members were, your friends were. Prepare for anything which may happen in the coming days or weeks. I did not say months. I am not making a prediction. I am simply sharing with you my heartfelt concern about you and about people that you love. I hope that you will all be well. I hope that you will all be safe and that nobody you know will be victims of any type of violence, of our crazy, insane gun culture, right-wing gun culture, counter-revolutionary gun culture that we have here in the US. And so I honestly can't think of anything else to say at the moment. I'm sure I will in the coming hours or days. And when I do, I will come back to the mic and address this subject. I can tell you, this was the last thing I expected to hear. If anything, I expected to hear something like Biden is dropping out of the race. That I thought was a possibility, and it may still be a possibility. I would imagine that now, given what has just happened, Biden is now even under more pressure to step down because his chances of being elected are virtually nil. And so I wish you well. I wish all you know well. And for the time being, This has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.